You're listening to the Visionary Lifestyle Podcast, the show that's dedicated to raising consciousness and empowering you to activate your highest potential. I'm your host, Magda Freedom Rod. Greetings, Rainbow Warriors. I am coming to you today from Croatia. I'm in Split, Croatia, going through it. Being here in the high season is a little bit challenging and has been a big lesson for me that maybe going to popular tourist destinations during high season is not the best choice. So, you live and you learn. But I am here because I needed to be out of the Schengen territory for visa reasons, because I'm heading next to Italy and to Portugal to offer a retreat and speak at a festival and do a special event in Lisbon at a really cool vegan yoga studio and restaurant. So, lots of fun stuff coming up. But for the moment, I had to be in Croatia. And here I am, live to tell. Melting in the heat without air conditioning and not really having enough time to get to the beach, trying to just pump out some work for you guys, organizing my retreats, getting this podcast out, and delivering value for you best I can. So today's guest is VerDarLuz. I met him at the DNX Global Conference, Digital Nomad Conference, that is, in Lisbon last summer, and we hit it off right away because I'd always been looking for someone who provides this service that he provides, this Astro Cartogrophy. This is a kind of astrology that helps you understand, shows you where your power points are, and I was really intrigued by that. So luckily I met him, and we have this great interview. We talk about Astro Cartography. He offers also Astro Locality, Astrology, Numerology, human design, and he teaches Tantra as well. So it's a big blend of all of that in his coaching practice. So he's a really interesting guy, and he has a lot to share about all of these modalities. So I hope you enjoy the interview, and I hope you're going to be joining us at the Digital Nomad Conference coming up. Actually, this time it's not a conference. It's moved up to a festival because it's over 1,000 people. And that will be in Lisbon, September 22nd and 23rd. And yours truly will be presenting a Wellness on the Road workshop there. So I will put the discount code link in the show notes for this show. And I'd love to see you there. If you guys are intrigued by this traveling, working all over the world lifestyle, this is the place to be. So hope you enjoy the show and get some value from it. Send me a note. I love hearing from you. Check out my Facebook page, Visionary Lifestyle and Podcast. And from there, you can link into my group and we can keep in touch there. Love you so much. Hope you enjoy. Namaste. VerDarLuz, welcome to the show.
It's great to be here. Thank you.
Thanks for making the time to sit with me and talk about divine timing and all the other yummy stuff you teach about.
Awesome, excited to be here, yeah.
We met at the DNX conference, and I was super excited to meet you and learn about what you're doing because, as I told you, it's something that I've been calling in for a long time, this kind of Astro Cartography. Is that the correct term?
Yeah, well, I use the word Astro Locality because Astro Cartography is one part of the larger locational astrology work. So I like Astro Locality. It's more a little bit more comprehensive. And it was a really wonderful opportunity to share at the Digital Nomad Conference because, any nomadic soul would really love this tool because it really can show you your power places around the world for different purposes in your life, relationships, certain kinds of career paths, places that you'll really resonate with. So it's definitely been my passion for since 2006 when I started astrology. I knew I wanted to kind of niche into that area because I was also a world traveler at heart. So it is one of the areas I really love to work with people in very deeply.
Mm-hmm. And so you weave other pieces into this as well, right? So you do the charts where you show the planets going through different places on the globe, and help people understand the meaning of that, right? And the other pieces that you incorporate in your coaching are numerology. Tell us more.
Yeah, sure. So my coaching work is divine timing coaching, and that name is really resonant with the tools that I use, and it's a life coaching and business coaching together, but it's really like kind of that holistic lifestyle design, where we really want to create lives that feel fulfilling, inspired, empowered, and where we also feel like we're in service to the planet and that we can be creative in that process. So what I've learned in my life and when I work with clients is that these tools, they're tools of self-reflection, being able to witness oneself in our patterns. Really all of those tools, astrology, numerology, and human design, they're tools of pattern recognition. They're languages for that. And so they give us vocabulary, and that vocabulary allows us to evolve those different patterns within us. Once we know the pattern, then we can evolve it. And so when we're coaching together, we're looking at things, for instance, like timing. When should I do what in my life? The astrology chart is the map of that. It tells you exactly when certain peak cycles are going to come in, certain opportunities are advantageous. You also have a lot of cycles represented in numerology. So when you harmonize with those cycles, then life is being in its flow. You're in the flow with it, and this is that aspect of divine timing. So so those tools are not, to me, they're not like ends in and of themselves. They're means towards self-realization and towards that deeper creative service here on the planet.
Yeah, I like that you focus on that piece of being service. And most astrologers are not really bringing in how can you be of service to the world as much as, right, most people focus on relationships and maybe a bit on business as well, but I like that you have that component in your awareness, and that's something that you're helping guide people into. Being of service, doing seva is one of the core tenets of what I teach, and it's so important for us to not only be living for ourselves, right, but to be giving back and to doing our part to be the change that we all want to see in the world, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
So the visionary lifestyle, my whole thing is about, in the podcast and all the work that I do is about helping people activate their highest potential. That's the tagline that I use. So it seems to me that these tools could be really helpful in activating people's highest potential. Could you explain to us how?
Well, I think starting with this aspect we just mentioned around timing, because I think that one of the most challenging things also in my own life and most of us is the quality of overwhelm that is so present in our world now, because we have the gift of in a way being able to be many places at once. We can learn about anything whenever we want. We have all this technology to expose us to the world. We can travel at will pretty much. And so there's all this this gift of options, but it's also the paradox of options, and that can really paralyze us. And so then we could be like, I don't know what to do because I could do all of it, Right. And it's like that also in relationships in our life. I do a lot of work in Tantra and Neo-Tantra, both Tantric philosophy and practice, and also sacred sexuality. And one of the things that I see is that, when we live in a world of like Tinder and swiping people, there's a lot of danger there to losing that emotional connection and that spiritual connection for the sake of, having options and being able to just swipe through our life. And one of the things that astrology, numerology, human design, these coaching tools with some of these more spiritual philosophies as their basis, like Tantra, is that we're really trying to awaken to the divine presence in each moment and in each relationship in our life and in our career path. So that when you're talking about seva, right, that nothing is not seva or everything is seva. That we want to feel like what we're doing in our life professionally is an aspect of our spiritual growth. And when you look at your birth chart, there's areas of the chart that reflect where our soul is going to feel in alignment, feel its destiny unfold, where we're going to feel our mission really, like we're going to accomplish something in this world, and be gifting the world through that, you know. But also we're going to become aware of where we're going to be really challenged, where we're going to have the struggle that's going to come up again and again, or the wound that will repeat itself. And then we have to learn, how can we take those wounded areas or the places we have struggled and realize that there's some kind of medicine in that wound. And that medicine is usually an insight into how we're going to serve the world in a deeper way. Because wherever we've hurt or struggled is usually we're more aware of it because we're hurt there. And so that gives us an insight to help other people who suffered in the same way. And so then the symbols in a birth chart can really help you get more specific about how that can manifest in your life. In relationships, you can see the patterns of, for instance, the masculine energy one wants to be honored for, or the feminine energy one yearns to be honored for, because it's really different. The different signs that the god and goddess Mars and Venus are in, they're like different costumes that the masculine and feminine wear. And what I've noticed, this was kind of my big awakening with astrology, actually, was about this masculine feminine energies, and seeing the patterns there of what I kept attracting in relationship, what I wanted to be honored for. To me, that was a revelation, and was like laser pointed psychology of relating. And so in a way we can accelerate our evolution by using these self-awareness tools and then applying them in the relational context, in the career context. With human design, there's an incredible new system, you know, it's a channeled system that came in the 80s, but now it's practiced all over the world. But what makes it unique is that it's expressing the patterns that live in our genes, in our genetic codons. And it's also using the planets, but the planets are actually defining the different codons in our DNA. So it's showing us that even though we are 99.9% the same, really, genetically, there's that 0.1% that makes us unique and different. And if we can learn about that, the patterns that are there, and also learn about how we are influenced or conditioned by environmental factors, where essentially our genes are being turned on by those around us, the situations around us, and that we can learn a lot there, but we can also get conditioned to maybe be something genetically that is not what we are. You know, that becomes really, really helpful, because we start to see how much we're living our conditioning in our life, as opposed to really expressing the highest vibration or frequency of really who we are on the genetic level. And then we can take it one step further. Of course, these tools show us the uniqueness and show us the individuality and difference. But ultimately, we have to do the even deeper work of living non-dualistically in our lives, where we're not separating ourselves and everyone else all the time and creating us and them stories, where we do practices and share in experiences together where we allow ourselves to feel that divine presence that is the base of everything, that is giving us breath right now in this moment. And that can be awakened through everything. There's these tantric meditations that are very simple at times but profound, like opening your consciousness to the sky and opening to the vastness and letting that spaciousness really teach you about who you truly are, right? And you know, so there's so many tools that we now have, but it's all about being able to practice with them and cultivate them. So what I like to promote with my clients and in my own life is those daily sadhanas, you know, with meditation, asana. I do a lot of qigong, finding whatever that daily practice is that connects you. And then having these symbolic tools, these languages that can help you reflect those patterns, evolve those patterns, and then enjoying the process, you know, as you go through, and allowing yourself to be creative and unfolding that in community, in love, in friendship.
Yum. And where does numerology fit into all of this?
Numerology is the newest system that I've worked with And wow, I was just blown away. It was the same. It was kind of the same process when human design came in and astrology came into my life, where I just couldn't believe how much was being reflected of my core patterns, and then also these cycles in life. And there's a lot of similarity between numerology and astrology, and some of the way they're structured. But what I always say is that different systems are like different lenses. And so we can go out and we can wear those, glasses that have the yellow filter on them or the blue filter, and we're still seeing the same trees or the same world, but we have like a different way to perceive that. Mm-hmm. So when you use the different systems, you're seeing yourself, or a partner or a business through, you're seeing the same there, but you're seeing it through a different language set. And that's really helpful because different minds are set up in different ways. Mm-hmm. Actually, human design talks a lot about how that whole process happens. So when I work with clients, it's so wonderful to be able to present with some different tools. And then also what happens is those different tools compound core themes, right? When you see the same story again and again and again, then you really get those core dynamics of why we're here and what we're doing. And also with numerology specifically, there's some cycles, for instance, like the personal year. And I have a course online about the personal year. Very simple to calculate, but actually quite powerful. Your personal year holds a lot of the energy of kind of the core dynamics of your external world, like what is going to present itself to you, what you have to work on, how you're growing in a lot of ways, and it's sort of the landscape you'll travel throughout the year. So there's just some ways that in some of the numerology cycles there's some nice filters that are sometimes maybe a bit easier to grok for people,
Can you give us some examples?
I can give you an example from my own life. Like the personal year. I've been in a 4-year this year, and the personal year always begins at the beginning of the year. But there's another cycle called the essence. And the essence is also about a year-long cycle, but actually that begins at your birthday. They're determined in different ways. The personal year is determined from your birth date, connected to what we call the universal year, which depends on, 2017 is a 1 year. So we add the 1 to your personal birthday. Mm-hmm. But the essence number is determined from your name, and it's changing every year at the birthday. And there's a lot of factors, a little bit more abstract to discuss. But that essence cycle is more internal shifts that are taking place, emotional shifts, how you're processing what's happening in maybe the personal year, what's going on in the outer world. So there's like cycles upon cycles happening. But like in my own life with the 4, it's been such a, on a lot of levels, such a business-focused year. 4 is all about building structures, creating foundations in your life, building stability, and things that you want to endure. If you look at the number 4, this is why numerology is so interesting. The shapes of the numbers speak a lot to what they're about. So the number 4 has this this block kind of form to it, and it has that angle, with the 4, that is kind of like a house, that you're building there. And that's really what's happening in the 4 year. It tends to be the year where we work really damn hard, and it's not as fun, but what we are building is very important for like long-term goals and ambitions. So the more strategic we can be, the better. We have to be very responsible. There's usually extra pressures in our life. And I know this year was a lot of that for me. And so, and then next year there will be a different kind of outer focus, and that'll be the 5 year. And what'll be interesting for me will be that will also be my essence number. So there'll be a mirroring of what's internal and external at the same time. That's a bit rare when that happens, but that should be really interesting as the new year comes in. So then you get to kind of see how these cycles work together, or maybe they conflict on some levels. And it's just really helpful. So sometimes, you know, that becomes like the umbrella cycle that I'm like, okay, yeah, everything is under this. Remember that all these other things are happening under this energy, and then it gives a bigger context for what's happening, you know? And so what I see again, like, wow, how these astrology cycles are being mirrored in the numerology cycles, which are being mirrored in human design also has cycles. So it's just a beautiful way to bring them all together and see, you know, kind of get the hints from the cosmos, you know, about how to be in that divine timing.
Yeah, because you hear the expression often that, you know, it's written in the stars, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So you're the interpreter of what the stars are saying.
That's a really great way of saying it, and that's what I usually say to people. You know, my role as the astrologer, and I think most astrologers would agree, is we're like translating. We're translating the story of the soul back to the client, and yeah, being an interpreter of that. And it's a I think most of us astrologers consider it a very high service and a very serious service, because it is it's a responsibility to reflect that back in a way that's constructive, that is inspiring, that's real, you know, that is not glossing over things, but is also not like heavy and dark and fatalistic in some way, because that's not actually what any of these systems are doing. They're showing how patterns are unfolding. And when we talk about prediction is not so much about this event is going to happen like this. It's here's a pattern that's unfolding. We know that every time that this planet moves into this house or across this other planet, these are the kinds of experiences that happen. So then we're painting a picture, and within that picture, there's these possibilities of how you want to express that. And so I use the word frequency a lot as a way of being more or less conscious with something, you know, essentially. And so we want to paint the picture so that you can raise the frequency of that cycle in your life and live it to its fullest, and be prepared for that. So so that's part of the translation process.
Yeah, so this work is about raising your own vibration, right? Through insight and understanding, right? Figuring out where you can have a higher vibration. Some places and times higher than others, right?
Yeah, and to see where those shadow spaces are, because we can't evolve them unless we see them.
Right.
And so there is a lot that all of these systems reveal that is typically left unconscious in us, you know. But what we're doing, hopefully, while we're here, is becoming more and more conscious. And so what's wonderful with these tools is that they're languages that reveal the unconscious and then empower you to integrate that into your path and into your gifts, actualizing your gifts here.
Yeah, because this is what I talk about, is helping people activate their highest potential so that they can deliver their gifts to the world. So you're offering some tools for that insight, right? To create that activation, so people can deliver their gifts to the world. That's beautiful. So when I say those words, activate your highest potential, like if I was a client and I came to you and I said, I really want to activate my highest potential, what is the advice you give someone? I mean, I imagine you read all the charts and it's very much based on that, but do you have any general advice in that direction for people?
Yeah, well, the first advice is what the Oracle of Delphi in Greece says, you know thyself. And that's where these tools are so valuable. They're tools of self-reflection. And so studying oneself is really the ultimate. But then the question becomes, what is the self? And this is the question that all, you know, serious spiritual cosmologies and philosophies have tackled for forever. And so we have to keep going deeper into asking that question, what is the self? So in my first book, I talk about that quite a bit, and this process of recognizing that we have patterns within us, we have energies that are constellated, that are gonna play out, and that's an element of our embodied self. It's not the wholeness of the self. And the deeper you go into studying the self, you know, especially in a lot of the Indian traditions, we discover, of course, that there's the one self, and the one self is expressing itself in all of these multiplicity of form. They call it Lila, right? The divine play of God, of the creator, of the God, of the goddess, Shakti. And that what we really need to do is continue to align ourselves in every moment in our consciousness with that what we are experiencing is not outside of ourselves. And that there isn't, you know, billions of separate things competing with each other. They're here. There's this one expressing itself in all of these different ways, and it's interdependent, it's interconnected. And one of the most fascinating meditations from a text called the Vijnana Bhairava, which is a tantric text, is simply realizing as your sensory, as you're perceiving with your senses, anything, people, smells, whatever it might be, that all of it is living inside of the awareness. It can't not live inside of my awareness. You live in my awareness. That sound outside is living in my awareness. All of it is in the awareness. So the awareness, the consciousness is primary. And it's, instead of thinking that everything's externalized, it's really all within this one body. And Bhagavad Gita talks a lot about that Krishna is informing Arjuna that Arjuna is like a cell in the body of Krishna, in the body of the divine. And so ultimately we have to continue to cultivate that level of awareness, which is difficult because our world is really promoting separation, differentiating storylines, competing energies, you know, governments and politicians that continue to polarize us. So the work becomes even stronger now to really do the essence of yoga, to yoke ourselves to the divine in every moment, and to also even, I think it's really even more challenging when we have political leaders that really reflect a lot of qualities that we all would label as negative. And in a way I feel that that's actually a test for us to see, like, where are we at in our dualistic versus our non-dualistic thought. Because if we just want to easily say that guy isn't right, or start to label that, now we've just created separation in that thought process. So actually we need the ego to be so inflated and to see, like, itself in such an extreme form, so that when we project onto it, we can see our own ego so clearly, and really choose from that place if we want to separate or really come into the consciousness of unity.
Unity, yoga. Yeah, I love the tools that you're sharing, and I do want to encourage people to do some more research around these things, the human design, the numerology, and the astrology. I know you're teaching and participating, studying a bit about Tantra, and I would like to talk about Tantra a little bit, because I think it's very highly misunderstood in many conscious circles, or even more so outside conscious circles. So can you define Tantra for us, and you know, the potential benefits that people can experience by practicing it?
Well, the first thing I would say is that I'm very much a student. You know, with everything that I teach about or share, I'm always just trying to learn more. And you know, the study of Tantras, it's a newer pathway for me. It's been about 5-6 years, but I guess my soul has always been very connected with those teachings. Maybe that kind of brought me to India actually many years ago. But now what's happened is, I think one of the things I like to teach about I have a new course coming out with some practices in Neo-Tantra, but also with some basis in Tantra. And I think that's the definition and differentiation we have to start with, because a lot of people think of Tantra, and what they're really thinking of might be called Neo-Tantra, which is more of the physical, body-based, sensual practices that partners can do with each other. And we could call that sacred sexuality, let's say. And Tantra is, you know, a philosophical system, a ritual practice. The word Tantra actually refers to texts, scriptures, sacred texts. The Tantras were these texts, and there was a huge kind of effulgence, a movement in 10th century Kashmir, where it was like the golden cusp of consciousness, where all these great masters were teaching these similar pathways of self-realization, and they were through these texts. So it's not actually an oral tradition like a lot of things are, but actually they were written down, and a lot of the tantras were dialogues between Shiva and Shakti, between the god and goddess, between awareness, Shiva, supreme consciousness, and Shakti, all of the manifestations, all of the forms of that supreme consciousness. But what's beautiful in the dialogue is we have that kind of feminine Shakti energy kind of questing into consciousness, what is the nature of life, of consciousness. And so you have these dialogues which are instructing us into what is truth. And through that, they're often given these meditative practices, these concentrations, these yogic practices. Some of them are very based in like a lot of yoga students would know them, certain pranayama practices like kumbhaka, like the holding of the breath and the inhalation and the exhalation, and really focusing the consciousness in those moments of pause, in the in-between. And there's some yogic-based practices like that can help realize oneself. And then there's other kind of meditative daily practices that include the senses, you know. There's practices of even when we're feeding ourselves or another, and the sensation of feeding and the sensation of being full, and what and really being in that sensation, and when we're feeling fully nourished, but that can be an awareness of divinity, that feeling of that. And so there's a lot of these practices that you would not think like, they're not necessarily so esoteric. They're really kind of basic. But when we bring awareness to them, there can be a revelation and a realization. There can be that epiphany that happens within us of what it means to really be alive. You know, and Tantra has kind of a core teaching that the perceiver, the perceived, and the perceiving can never be separated. Thus, oneness must necessarily exist. Because there can't be, like, I can't look over to that pillow in the room as the perceived object. The perceiver, can't look over there without the act of perceiving. It's always happening together. So what is happening? The divine is always perceiving itself, reflecting on itself. And this is also a concept they call kind of the net of Indra. This is kind of a well-known idea that kind of all of the souls are these like luminous beings, these gems. They call them the gems, or the like kind of the crystalline consciousness that are reflecting each other infinitely in this net, in this web. And so we look at one and we see all these others reflected, and we are reflecting all of them. And that concept is very much kind of elucidated in the tantras. And so ideally, Neo-Tantra, sacred sexuality, has these teachings at its basis. That's not always happening. A lot of Tantra, whether it's a certain course or a retreat or some festivals, there are Tantra festivals, there is a focus on sexuality, on intimacy, which is beautiful. Not necessarily about looking at the other as the reflection of the divinity, but that is really the essence. That when we engage in like a neo-tantric practice, which we might also call a practice we do with a medicine partner, someone, the medicine of consciousness. We're sharing it together. That's what we're doing. We're trying to raise our consciousness, elevate ourselves into that divine truth that we've been speaking of, that the oneness is. You know, and that's why you see those images, like the yantras or the tankas with like the deities in the yab-yum position, you know, with the consorts, that merging of the masculine and feminine within us, and that idea that in connection, in relationship, in sexuality, we can move beyond just the pleasure principle and move into an awakening of supreme consciousness together. And so you can use the body and sensuality and you know, kissing and all of the elements of that in a way to become aware of divinity. But you could also use it in a way that's just very, very basic on some level, very, you know, very rote, you know. And so one of the edges in our society right now, I think, around evolution is around sexuality and how we want to work with it and what potential is there, you know, to awaken to our true nature through our intimate practices with another. So it's beautiful, and so, you know, study of Tantra and study of Neo-Tantra are really, really mutually empowering pathways. So it's some of the joy I have in my life, bringing those into my own practice, you know, and to helping other clients with them. So
excuse me. So it's great to break it down like that and get a deeper understanding. Are there any daily practices or tools that you can share to help people kind of move forward on this path?
Referring to Tantra or to astrology?
Well,
or some of this?
Any of the above.
Well, wow, there's so much potential in that question.
Yeah, I mean, it's just we're quite heady in this conversation, and I want to bring it to a practical place for people, that they can walk away from this conversation feeling like they know a step that they could take to move forward in the direction of any of the things that you're sharing about.
Well, most of us have heard this phrase, like, follow your bliss. You know, Joseph Campbell said this, follow what makes you feel most creative, most enjoy, most inspired, playful. I think if we're doing that every day, we're always going to be on the right path. And that's sort of the high level. Do that, you know. And then within that, I do believe that, like, the charts, astrology, numerology, design, and other tools help to reflect how you do that, you know, and where you'll feel really fulfilled doing that. Then there's I feel like a need for most of us to be doing some kind of daily sadhana, some kind of daily spiritual practice that does not necessarily have to be sitting meditation, but it can be that. It can be yoga, asana, it could be qigong, it can be any tool that connects us to the higher self, you know, that is living within us.
Yeah, agreed. Daily practice is something I really want to be encouraging people to do, whether it's meditation, yoga, any of these things. Daily practice is a key to moving forward on any sort of conscious and hopefully spiritual path. Of all these tools that you're sharing, is there one that has been more useful or profound for you than others? Is there one that stands out that's your favorite?
Well, I say that, you know, I was gifted some synchronicities in my life that pointed me in the direction of becoming an astrologer. And you know, that coming into my life and the revelations I had around this language, this tool, you know, made me want to choose that as my career path, something that I would study the rest of my life, that I would never get bored of, never cease learning in. So I give a lot of gratitude to the Great Spirit for that coming to my life the way it did, and at I'd say a relatively early age. I wouldn't say like favorites, but in terms of like importance, you know, having these tantric teachings and some of the, what I would say, the non-dualistic philosophies and teachings. I also work with the Course in Miracles quite a bit, and you know, that teaching is a constant revelation, and it's constantly challenging the ego to let go of its grip on the self. So non-dualistic philosophical teachings, and also I do a lot of shamanic work in my life and ceremonial work. I facilitate some work, and I've been doing shamanic work pretty much in parallel with my astrological studies. So it's been about 14, 15 years. And being able to work with medicines that are great teachers, and that can take us all the way to dissolving the ego completely and surrendering into this embrace of the oneness, the embrace of the void, letting go of that egoic separate self, not just in an idea of doing that, but through a profound and deep experience. That work I'm very committed to.
You're talking about plant medicine.
Yeah,
Yes.
the extensions of plant medicine and work around that. So there's, you know, I think that can be a very powerful pathway for people. It's not necessarily everyone's pathway, just like yoga and asana is not everyone's pathway, or astrology might not be. And that, to answer the question, really is that. It's like experimenting with one's life, feeling what does resonate as those primary tools, and staying open to what could be other tools, being experimental. I'd say to know thyself, the second part of that is keep prying open the mind and prying open the heart, prying open the spirit. And the willingness to do that is actually probably our most important thing, to not get locked in, even to that, what we call spiritual materialism, you know, like, oh, I got this figured out, and, you know, being a bit high and mighty with all the spiritual work that we've done, you know, which there's some great YouTube videos making jokes of that, you know, with all of the yoga movements and these things, which I think is also important, maintaining the sense of humor as we grow and evolve, which sometimes the spiritual path can feel quite serious. Right. But maintaining humor along the way, and one of the other things I think a lot of us deal with is, like, you know, I should have known better. Like I know more than that of my spirituality. So when I get down on myself, or if I have a reaction in some situation, I get angry, you know, instead of like making ourselves wrong or guilty for that, going into it. This is what the Tantras teach, you know, go into the anger. What's at the root of it? It's Shakti, it's pure energy. And that energy can be creative as well as destructive. It also is just alive. It's alive. And so they don't use the terms negative emotions. It's energy, right? And I think that's one of the things that maybe we can start to adopt is, you know, whatever we're feeling is an insight, you know, is a potential for awakening. And also I feel like that forgiveness of oneself and of others is essential to an awakening process. Actually, there is no other in forgiveness, right? So it is the one of the clearest trajectories to unity consciousness is forgiveness. Sure. That there isn't really another doing something to me or me doing something to them, right? It's all of this divine play, and what I'm really forgiving is when I'm forgetting that it's the divine play, when I'm forgetting that it's oneness, and I'm creating story around it, and I'm identifying myself in this very limited way. That's when we really suffer. We forget that we are the vastness. We are consciousness that includes everything and is the base of and including and holding everything. We forget that, and we become that anger only, or we become, you know, not getting that job, or, you know, the experience that didn't feel so good, and we really concentrate our identity there, and we forget the vastness of who we are, and we need to forgive that, you know. And if we can forgive that, and then continue to cultivate and practice that sense of the awareness that is always present within us, I think we're on the path of awakening, you know. But the path isn't like an end goal. It's now, you know. So
it's the journey.
Yeah.
It's the journey.
Yeah.
Yeah. Beautiful. Anything else you want the listeners to know?
Well, I could share a little bit about, if they want to tune into the work a little bit,
sure.
And maybe get a reading or some coaching work. I have a website called divinetimingcoaching.com. I blog on there about everything from conscious relationship, the archetypes of the zodiac, Tantra, all of these tools we've been talking about today. I'm creating an online school for my courses. I'm about to launch the 9th course online. I currently have them on udemy.com, but I'm going to launch the Divine Timing online school, and that's going to be a great way for people to tune in and you know, get kind of concentrated teachings. Like, there's a course all about emotional intelligence in your moon sign. There's a course about the love languages. There's a course about finding your ideal career path with astrology.
Cool.
And these are, like, you know, mostly 2-hour courses, and so that's a nice way to tune in for a lot of people. And then I offer strategy sessions for those who might be interested in some ongoing coaching, 3 to 6 month programs. I create specifically for clients, so I do some pretty deep customized packages for clients, and then I also do single consultations in locational astrology, finding your power places around the world, relationships, business, human design. So that's where you can find me, at Divine Timing Coaching.
Perfect. And I just wanted to go back to human design for a minute, because we didn't get too deep into it. And I imagine that most people listening have never even heard of human design. Numerology, astrology are more common, I think. Could you just briefly define for people what that is?
Yeah. And I have a couple blog posts about it as well.
Good.
And
okay, we'll link to this in the show notes.
Yeah, there's I think I briefly mentioned, it's a channeled system that you know, is based on your birth date, time, and place. The time is a bit less important than in astrology, but the focus in design is seeing where you have what we call this genetic definition, where your genes are defined by the planets when you were born, and what this shows us is it gives you a kind of energy type that you are. There's 5 primary types. And those types have different strategies for making decisions in their life. Those types have different strategies for being in relationship with each other. So you kind of start with the types there, but then you go deeper, and so you learn about these 9 energy centers, which are similar to the chakras a bit, but not exactly the same. And those energy centers are either defined or defined in what we call your body graph. So those centers, depending on how they're defined, it's going to give you a certain way of involving yourself in relationships and in the world. And you're going to also be conditioned by environmental factors, by relationships in your life, through what we call the open centers. So you have centers that are genetically defined, a lot of who you are as an individual, And then you have these centers that are open and really getting influenced by the environment. So what does that mean? Well, we break that down when we do a consultation. How best do you work with those open centers? And then we go deeper and we talk about the channels of energy, the channels that are connecting the two centers. So this is like this genetic codon and this genetic codon are communicating to each other, and there's an archetypal pattern there. There's an energy that's going to consistently show up there again and again. So when we interpret your design, we're looking at where you are defined there and how to be the highest frequency with those channels and those centers you have defined. And it just keeps going. There's many layers to it. You have a profile, there's 12 different profiles. It tells a lot about your personality, your approach to life, your bonding strategy. So there's many layers to design, but even if you work at just the basic layer of your type and your strategy, there can be a lot of growth there. It's a tool that begs the client to experiment with it, you know. And when you do, you'll see that, wow, living my strategy, following my inner authority, it works. So design is helping you really be authentic in your self-expression.
Yum. Well, I think we could all use a bit more of that, being more authentic in our self-expression. Beautiful. Thank you for taking the time to explain that. I imagine people are interested in learning more about this. We'll make sure that there are links to your work in the show notes so people can go and learn more and continue on their path of awakening and self-discovery and self-expression.
Beautiful. Well, it's been a pleasure to be with you today and to share, you know, all the passions that I love. So
yeah. Thank you for doing what you do and for helping to wake people up.
Thank you. You're spreading the message, and that's the biggest work we can be doing right now. So
go team. Thanks. High five. Thank you.
Okay. Aho.
Thanks so much for answering the call to be here today. I'm so glad you're part of our tribe of activated rainbow warriors. If you found the show in any way empowering or inspiring, I would be so grateful if you would share the show on social media or with friends and family that you think would benefit from these conversations. And also, rate and review the show in iTunes. This is really the very best way to help support the show and help us get noticed by others who are looking for the sort of content that we're sharing. Now notice there are no outside ads playing here. That's because the show is supported by you, the listener. You can become a patron of the show with a small monthly donation by checking out the perks on our Patreon page at patreon.com/visionary lifestyle and signing up there. There's also a one-time donation button on the podcast page of the website if that suits you better. And just so you know, your donations help to cover the necessary out-of-pocket monthly expenses to produce the show and will also help us grow so we can inspire and educate even more people. And hey tribe, I'd love to hear from you. Visit me at visionary-lifestyle.com and please tell me your comments and questions. I really look forward to connecting with you. I love you. Namaste.